Welcome to the Beginner Photography Podcast. Today, it's time for Dodger Baseball. Let's get into it.
Welcome to the Beginner Photography Podcast, a weekly podcast for those who believe that moments matter most and that a beautiful photo is more than just a sum of its settings. A show for those who want to do more with the gear they have to take better photos today. And now, your host, Raymond Hatfield.
Oh man, welcome back to this episode of the podcast. I am your host, Raymond Hatfield, and today is a great day. If you have been listening to the podcast for any amount of time or are a part of the Beginner Photography Podcast Facebook group, or we are friends on Facebook, then you will know that my baseball team is the Los Angeles Dodgers. I love watching baseball. I love going to baseball games, and boy, has this been a very bad year for baseball fans everywhere, no matter what team you root for with, the season being shut down because of COVID, obviously. So it just seems like this spring without baseball has been, I'll tell you what, it is just not right. It's not right. It just feels very weird and unnatural. And to have to go through it without any sort of help with baseball has been challenging. So today was just a dream come true for me. I got the opportunity to interview the Los Angeles Dodgers head team photographer, Jon Soohoo. Now, I've been following Jon for a decade now, and some of his images are actually on my wall right there. If you're watching on YouTube, there's one. Jon has been photographing the Dodgers since the mid-'80s, so he has seen it all. Now, if I said that today was just a regular interview, I would be lying. And as much as I'm telling you, I wanted to talk about, photographing legends like Koufax and Gibson and Hershiser, Ethier, Sachs, Roberts, Lasorda, Scully, I mean, all of them. I couldn't, I had to keep the conversation about photography just for you. So I really hope that if you're listening right now, you if you're a baseball fan, you understand how hard that would have been. But again, I know that you're going to get a lot out of this interview. While a lot of it is about baseball, even if you're not into baseball at all and you're just, totally mental, there is still a lot to get out of this interview, specifically about just preparation, timing, missing the moment, and the importance of photography to others. So I'm really excited for you. I'm going to keep this intro short. We're going to get into this interview right now with Dodgers team photographer, Jon Soohoo. Jon Soohoo, you didn't go to school for photography. You didn't grow up with a camera in your hand, but you did start shooting at the Daily Trojan when you attended USC. I want to know, what was it about photography in those early days that made it clear to you that photography was going to be a more important role in your life than what you were currently at USC studying?
Well, I had originally been my mom and dad were alum of USC. Actually, my dad was an alum of USC, and he brought me to every football game when I was a kid in the early 70s when USC was really good. And so I would go to the games with my mom and dad and my Uncle Taft, and I was sitting in the seats up in Tunnel 10, watching really good USC teams back in the day. And at some point in time, it got so crowded because SC was getting so good that we were just walled, sitting in the seats wall to wall, elbow to elbow. And I was looking on the field. It's there's nobody down there. How do you get down there? So I just threw it at my mom, and she, we didn't have a real discussion about it, but I just put that in the back of my mind. And then as I got to high school, there was no photo program at LA Unified School Districts didn't have any really photo programs at all, which is shocking, but not really. But anyway, so I played sports. I played basketball, ran track, and I've always had this love for sports. Me and my buddy John Carpita, and we would play ball, every kind of ball. When it was a football season, we threw the football around, every which way it went. But when it came down to it, I got to USC. I had no direction yet. I was undeclared. I didn't know what I was doing. I was commuting back and forth. But I always knew in the back of my mind, I wanted to stay in sports somehow. And then the thought of being on the field at the Coliseum to shoot USC games was just like the ultimate. And so I went to the Daily Trojan while I was at SC, and I asked to see about becoming a black and white intern or whatever, a lab intern to do their processing or printing of somebody else's stuff, not my images. But I was, that was what I applied the job for, and I got the job to be a darkroom tech per se. And then that was like my first real season of being in that newspaper journalistic era. And next thing you know, I started picking up the camera and got out of being just the darkroom guy and started shooting USC women's basketball games. I shot USC track, all the non-football basketball stuff, because those were for the big shooters, the big photographers at the Daily Trojan. And so to get into these other sports was a lot less stressful because there was no as hard need as there is for like football and basketball, like there is at SC. But then at that time, Cheryl Miller, the McGee twins, Rhonda Wyndham and Cynthia Cooper, that era of USC women's basketball became elite. And they won national championships like crazy. And I was on that ride. I ended up doing some shooting for the USC Sports Information of them. And so everything evolved. The next thing you know, I got my first credential to shoot a USC football game back, like I probably was like my second year doing it. I was working at the Daily Trojan, and they let me go down the football field to shoot USC Tennessee. And next thing I shot a black and white photo of I think Keith Browner making a tackle on one of the Tennessee Volunteer guys, and that ran in the paper the next day. And that was all she wrote. That's when I kind of knew that's what I really wanted to do. And so I don't really know how I got here, to be honest with you.
I think I heard somewhere that you were majoring in, is it gerontology? Is that right?
It's called gerontology.
Gerontology.
And it's the study of the aging process.
Mm-hmm.
And it deals with every aspect of the aging process. So not only just not the physical part like medically, but I mean as far as the administrative part of all the crap you have to go through, all the paperwork that's involved, all the medications that could be possibly involved, all the societal issues that are involved. It was a perfect major for me because I'm not a book smart guy, and I know I'm not academically one of the elite in any way, shape, or form. So to find a major that was compassionate was key to my making it through USC.
Yeah. So did you finish out your schooling with your major you did?
Yeah, Bachelor of Science in Gerontology.
Wow.
I think we had a graduating class of 8.
Nice.
Every
small,
other school
nice
had, now they're like, I think they're up to either thousands per year or, 700 to 1,000 per year since,
Jeez.
well, I mean, the baby boomers are like, I'm like the end of the baby booming, and parents and grandparents are either getting near the end or they're already gone. But it's a huge factor back in that day because the needs there were so many needs of the elderly community.
So at what point did you decide to yourself, you know what, I know that I just spent several years learning all that I could about the study of aging, but I'm just going to kind of neglect all of that and pick up my camera and start shooting sports?
Well, it was hand in hand. I was shooting at the Daily Trojan while school was going on. So it was not like and honestly, well, the gerontology part came on was like a junior going into my senior, into my senior year. So it was only like 2 years of solid schooling of that. So it was just a basic education like everything else. And it just so happened that after I got done with class, I would go shoot a basketball game or a football game or a baseball, actually never baseball, but track and field, and, shoot on campus stuff. But there's never a point when I was like an either or. I was just doing both. Yeah. And so when it came down to my mom and dad, wanting me, to be successful or whatever, they gave me the opportunity to just like go with the flow and let me do what I wanted to do. And they saw I would bring home, after I shot a football game, I would bring home the 8x10 prints that I made for the paper for deadline. I would make an extra copy and bring it home to my dad and my mom, and they would be like, they're pretty excited to see it. I don't think they knew there would be a profession coming out of it, but it was pretty cool to see they appreciate what I was doing. They didn't pressure me at all to get me on to, try to get a real job per se. And then I was blessed to run into my boss, at the future boss, Andy Bernstein, at a USC women's basketball game. So, and that kind of led me on to where I am today.
Yeah, that was a perfect segue because my next question for you specifically was about Andy Bernstein.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the time when you started with the Dodgers, he was the lead photographer, right? He was the head photographer for the Dodgers.
There were two. One was, I believe there was another, he was a Craig Mullen. There's a couple of guys that were there as the color guys, and he was the black and white guy. I mean, how they designated back in the day is however they did it. But when I met him, I was shooting a USC women's basketball game at the in Los Angeles. The LA Memorial Sports Arena was where USC played their basketball and the Clippers played their basketball. So there would be times when there'd be a doubleheader. And so the morning game was the USC women's game, and then the afternoon, evening game was the Clipper game. So I was shooting the SC game and getting near the end, and he sat down next to me, I guess in prep to get his, stuff ready for the next game. And then we started talking, and he knew, we found out about each other, and then he needed a darkroom guy to do some NBA printing of his Clippers and his Lakers from those days. And so I started working for him, doing black and white printing, processing and printing of somebody else's images of Clippers and the Lakers and the opponents. And that was the preliminary formation of NBA photos.
I mean,
which is a kingdom today, by the way.
Yeah. And Andy is he's just a legend when it comes to sports photography. Anybody who's really into sports photography knows who he is. So as somebody who came up, kind of under him, what would you say was one of the most impactful lessons that you learned while working under Andy Bernstein?
Well, there are so many things I learned from him. He's an icon in my eyes. Number one, the photography skills. Remember, I didn't go to school for this stuff. So I'm learning how to strobe arenas because of him. I'm bringing up these 2,400 watt packs, on both hands. So we've got to put four of them up in the sports arena, and we got to drop the lines and how to light things is just an amazing thing that you just can't take for granted. Those flashes going off in the ceiling, somebody had to bring that shit up there. And it was usually me. And, through him teaching me how to do it, I was able to help him light the sports arena, like the Forum, whenever we had like all-star games somewhere else. I believe he took me down to Albuquerque for either a McDonald's game, high school game that he got hired for. But I would go up there and just lug the packs, lug the heads, lug the magic arms to make sure. I mean, it would be it's a phenomenal experience to be, number one, hanging off a catwalk trying to, rig all this stuff up. But, hey, that was my education. And then I learned how to do portraits from him and how to work with whoever the athlete is. You don't have like an hour with an athlete. You have like 3 minutes if you get 3 minutes. And so learning how to shoot efficiently, knowing what your shots are, knowing how to do Polaroids, because there was no digital back then. It was film, fellas. So learning how to shoot medium format with either Hasselblad or Mamiya. There's just so many things that are involved. And then the other part of Andy that's very educational is the business side that I learned from him, and how this it's not free. Nothing is free here. And it had to be tweaking it towards clients that pay money for us to be doing what we do. And so it was so much easier to do back then, before all the the big monster companies took over and kind of watered things down and brought in cheaper hires and that kind of thing, where it was just a different beast back in the day, where there were actually magazines too. I don't know if you remember Sport Magazine or Inside Sport Magazine, but those were pretty big back in the day. And we were pretty big with them. And card companies were also new. Upper Deck was kind of big. There were like 6 card companies that were out there and giving day rates. And so just to be a part of that, all that with shooting slides, where it wasn't you scan it and send it digitally. It was actual slide you put in a FedEx envelope and you send it directly to the photo editor of that magazine or paper or publication or card company. And then they would either say yay or nay. They'd use it, and then they'd come back with a check, and then the sales report would come off of that. And it was just it was the beginning of NBA photos, or the beginning of pretty much what they call it was Focus on Sport, and there was Focus West at the time. Those were the two major agencies, and All Sport became part of that, and then All Sport became part like Getty-ish, and then that was Getty is now where everybody is kind of at right now. So
it's funny to me to think, whenever you listen to other photographers and they talk about, now with digital, the importance of shooting on like two cards. Like, I'm not going to shoot unless it's on two cards. Got to have backups. And then I just think back, 15, 20 years ago when you had to, develop the film and then send it somewhere in the mail. Like, that's way more dangerous than only shooting with one card, which is just crazy. It's cool to, to hear, I guess, from the working professionals, really what that world was like for us. It's just so hard to imagine. But as time went on, you stayed with the Dodgers organization, and now today you are the lead team photographer. Is that correct?
that's correct.
So
Yes.
as the lead team photographer, you have to shoot more than just the 9 innings. I want to know what your job is responsible for. What are you responsible to shoot that's not related to the baseball game?
Just about everything.
Everything, nice and easy.
Well, we have renovations going on in the ballpark. We have the brand new outfield that I've been documenting that since, even during COVID. I've been going out there to cover, the growth and the different stuff they've put in, and so it's. And then during before the game actually started, we have pregame activities which aren't going to happen this year, but there'd be anthem singers and people throwing the first pitch, and then there's marketing shots. They got to get signage in the back, that need signage of. It's all encompassing now, especially digitally compared to the film days when it was just a roll of 8 rolls of film onto a proof sheet, and then you give that to the PR guy to pick the ones he wanted, and then I print a 5x7. Now it's like everything has to. Now I have an editor that I plug my camera in, it goes to him, and he will, or hey, Josh or Katie, they'll image it to wherever they need to go. There's social media now, which also wasn't there back in the day. So everything's is changing dramatically, and just pumping out stuff is what I mean, I don't even know how to explain it, because it's so much quantity. And I try not to let that overwhelm me, but once I plug the camera in, I'm already done. So
yeah. Did I hear you right when you said that when you were shooting on film, would you shoot an entire game on just 8 rolls of film?
Oh, no. It could be anything, but I would use I don't know if you know that term, but it's called a bulk loader, where they get a big old 100-foot rolls of film, and then you like throw them into 36 roll. So it'd be anywhere from 8 to 15 and rolls of black and white. And then when I became quote the color shooter, I would shoot color. I shoot Fujichrome 100. Probably do 10 to 20 rolls on a day game, because that was really the only way you were going to get color back in the day, because there was no night color film. There's no high speed color film that could cover baseball games back in the day. So it was black and white during the night, and then color slide during the day.
Wow.
And so that would be easy, because I would bring that to a lab, but the black and white I would have to do myself. Yeah.
So would you be loading up these rolls while you were out like on the field, or would this be done?
No, that's beforehand. I'd load up probably anywhere from I'd probably do the whole roll of 100-footer into the canisters and have them ready to go for however long it takes to go through it.
I gotcha. Okay. So now today, about how many team photographers are covering a game?
Well, everything's so changing now because of the COVID that I had to request a second. I usually have had 2 photographers, me and another photographer, be in-house per game for the last probably 5 years. And that was because while I would be shooting, we would shoot the pregame stuff together, and then when the game would start, the other photographer would shoot either across the way from wherever I would be, whether it's first or third. I would be requiring that photographer to cover the rest of whatever's going on the field game wise, while I go walk around and shoot different angles from different parts of the ballpark and do other, because there's stuff going on in the clubhouse, there's stuff going on in the dugout. You can't be shooting if you're across the way at first base and the dugout's on third base. So I had that extra added dimension brought in there. Then we have a lot of, we have so many owners and so many VIPs that come that I can't necessarily be at this, everywhere at the same time. So the Dodgers have been very, they've been very great about allowing me to have an extra person there to help pick up whatever I can't get to. And then this year is going to be completely different. There's no pregame activity. There's nothing's on the field other than the game. There's no high fiving, and so everything's really different. So it's it'll be different for sure, and it'll be mostly game action now, because all that extra flavor stuff I can't get to because I have no access to that.
Of course, this is going to be such a crazy year for baseball. I can't wait. Honestly, I can't wait. It's going to be. I mean, we're all going to be swinging for the fences. It's just going to be so much fun to watch. It's going to. I cannot imagine what it's going to be like.
I hope it lasts. I'm just not sure how long it's going to last, because as the numbers get higher, I mean, they already closed down the beach down here for the weekend. Yeah. There's no 4th of July, mainly because the numbers are just like jumping right back up again. And who knows who you take the stuff home to, you know? And so
exactly.
I can understand why players are getting kind of hesitant, because we should all be kind of hesitant, but we have jobs to do in order to pay the rent.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we'll see. You know, I can obviously, as a fan of baseball, I can hope for the best.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And we'll see. So my next question for you is this is kind of more of a personal question, and that is, having been with the Dodgers for so long, do you view yourself as part of the Dodgers team?
I actually do. It took me a while to actually get to that point where I'd be comfortable, but as each new owner goes through, and each new GM goes through, and each new PR guy goes through, and each new, you know, there's a door that opens and closes, and I've been blessed to still be in it. You know, this is my 35th season shooting the Dodgers. You know, so it's just kind of a unique perspective in that I've been there with the O'Malleys all the way up until the new group now, and it's just been. If I'm not considered part of the Dodge organization, then I don't know who would be, you know?
Right. Okay, that's good, because that leads me into my next question, which is, in a baseball game, in all sports, capturing the celebrations of a win is incredibly important. And in both 17 and 18, the Dodgers made it to the World Series, ultimately did not take home the trophy. But having been with that team for so long, having seen that group of guys get as far as they did, and then ultimately, you know, not take home that trophy, is there anything that you do to capture a loss for the team of that size?
Yeah, it's called a Leica. It's my rangefinder that makes no sound at all. It's, you know, I pick my moments. I mean, this is emotional times for me too. I mean, if we lose, I mean, when we've lost, it sucked. And I'm not necessarily going up there and, you know, jamming cameras in the guys' faces that just, you know, are crying. But, you know, when they start doing, when it's the right time, I'll know when to pick up the camera. And, you know, I've been blessed to be, you know, in the past, I've been in the team meetings for, you know, ever since, you know, pretty much Jim Tracy was the manager. Even before that, after Tommy left, I was pretty much home free to do whatever I wanted in the clubhouse as far as, you know, my access, because they trust me. And, you know, I'm not going to do anything stupid with that trust. And they've lit me into the meet. Dave Roberts has been, you know, probably one of the greatest, because he gets it. Joe Torre got it. I mean, all of the managers kind of understand we're not a small market team. We're a big market team. Fans love it. And when they see the behind the scenes stuff, that's more important sometimes than the game stuff. They'll never remember what happened during the game, but if they see a guy hugging, you know, down in the tunnel or in the food room or that kind of thing, then that's probably more memorable than any of the game stuff I shoot.
Yeah, what's going through your head in that moment, though? I know that you said that you want to, you know, not get in anybody's face, but how do you go about trying to capture that story? I mean, I'm just trying to wrap my head around this. I really can't imagine.
Well, it's pins and needles. I mean, I try to. Well, first off, you're not going to see everything I've shot. So what you're going to see is what, you know, the team has let me, you know, present to social media to put out. But I'm not in there with my D5 with a flash going and, you know, all kinds of noise going on. The Leica's very low key, quiet, behind the scenes kind of. I shoot it on the planes. I shoot on you know, going to the hotels. I shoot it, you know, anything that is involving, you know, a good image that's not obnoxious with a big old loud, you know,
clinky shot.
What do you call them? Yeah, exactly.
Mirror slap. So, yeah.
Exactly.
Now, is that the Leica Q that you have?
I started with the M6 back in the day, in black and, you know, with black and white, and, you know, it was probably 2000 and probably, yeah, it was 2000. That's when I first got my first Leica. And then I've graduated to the Q eventually. I tried the monochrome for a while. had some personal issues, so I had to sell it. So next thing you know, I got the Q, and then I went to the Q2 a couple of years ago, and so that's just a badass camera. So
I have a friend who he's the lead photographer for the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and he
okay.
just recently got the Leica Q, and he said that it's like really changing the way that he's shooting. So I always love to hear that when you're replacing these big, massive, I mean, pro DSLRs with something much smaller and able to still get a great image.
It's funny. I'll carry my Leica in my little fanny pack in front of me, but I'll
Hmm.
still have the big old apparatus with a 20. I carry a 28 to 300 with me, the Nikon
Oh,
uh,
jeez.
28 to 300, which is it's not the most professional lens, but it gets the job done. And
Hmm.
when you're considering the image is going to be around like this size on the Instagram or whatever the social media is, what is the quality is excellent. The ISOs are so high on these cameras anyway. It doesn't matter how slow that lens is, but it covers the range from 28 to 300. I mean, what else do you need? But I always have that Leica in front of me,
Hmm.
just as it looks like a sweet shot. If I want to do a miniature shot with it, or a panoramic with it, or a moody black and white that's in the dugout. I mean, I'll pull it out at that point, but it's never it's always, I always considered like a me camera, just something that I'm shooting from. That's just my happy place.
I love that, my happy place. It's always so good to hear like of other professionals who shoot so much that there's still passion in the photography, and that they can kind of, especially like you're saying, like with the Leica right there, that you can use that as kind of see it from a different mindset and get photos that are more you, that are more you. Going back to the World Series, there, I want to know, you've shot games for, as you said, 35, 36 years. Do you prepare any differently for a World
Oh yeah.
Series game versus a mid-season game?
Well, absolutely, and I staff it out like crazy.
Hmm.
I have bring on extra photographers. I have one outside, the normal one outside, inside first on that side, because our dugout's on the third base. I'm right in the dugout on the stairwell when they come in, so that's the angle I have for going, towards home plate and third base and everything in that perspective I have on my side. But I have my other photographer on first base side, and then I have one in center field, and then I have one roaming, and then I have two editors and a runner and blah blah blah. There's so many parts going on because there's so much more getting needs. So I staff it out more. Yeah, that's pretty much. But I still maintain that it's still I put up a pole cam in the dugout with me with a fisheye on it. So either a walk-off going on at home plate, or something in the dugout that I can go high with the pole cam with a fisheye on it, and it kind of like gets a little closer. And so it's been like it's a huge blessing to be in that location, because
Oh
I'm actually
man.
not even I'm not even in a photo position in where I'm at. I'm actually in the dugout. I'm right next to the TV cameraman. Actually, like behind the TV cameraman. That's how obstructed this is.
Yeah.
But I'm considering my mobility and my agility as a basketball player to be able to slither around with one of the 2300 is not that big. It's just it's not like a big old 400 in my hand or a
Hmm.
604. It's compact enough to cover what's going on in the dugout or what's going on at home plate with ease. So
What about
it's
kind of
good.
after the fact, I guess? Because, or no, I take that back. Let's talk more about the game
Mm-hmm.
itself. So during the game, like you said, somebody's walking around. Are you just trying to photograph? Let me rephrase. Are you trying to follow the ball, or are you trying to follow a specific player?
Well, it's all what do you call game situations. I mean, if there's a runner on first, and there's one or two outs, and I'm kind of or one out or less, then I'll go aim towards. I'll kind of figure that the ground ball's hits, it's going to try to turn two. If I mean, it's all game situations. So if there's a runner at second and a singles hit, if the play's going to come home, and it's just being able to transfer my focus from wherever the batter was going, back to following the runner from second to home, trying to get the catch lined up for a possible collision at the plate. I mean, there are different variables. If I need a pitcher who's, it's just try to keep up with the game.
Yeah, yeah. That brings me to another question, which is how um, how aware of the game do you need to be, or how aware do you need to be of what's going on in the game while shooting?
The game part is pretty easy to keep up with because I mean, I care, and it's like being a
Yeah.
baseball fan who knows what's going on. The part that I get kind of mixed up on is if milestones, or if like Chase Utley is going to get one more hit and he gets 10,000, whatever, I don't know that necessarily beforehand unless somebody tells me. So it'd probably be a better idea I prepare and know this stuff, but it doesn't necessarily work like that.
Yeah.
There's so much stuff going on between the pregame, between the VIPs being there, between needing to shoot the owners in the owners seats with their guests, any celebrity coming on the field. I mean, there's so many things going on that I'm not going to necessarily know the milestone stuff.
So one thing that I get asked quite often, as somebody who shoots weddings, from new photographers, they say like the one thing that they're scared of most is missing the moment, right? Is being at a wedding and missing a shot. As a sports photographer, with so many people on the field, with so many cogs essentially moving at all times, how much of that do you feel? How much of that does that affect you?
It affected me a lot more earlier when I, wasn't able to get moments because I wasn't prepared. But knowing the game situation and knowing my equipment, short of, me setting it wrong to get the focus to jump out of focus, which, early autofocus days was, happened a lot because it would jump from what you're, hoping to get. As soon as the real part of the play happened, it would jump right out of focus, and I couldn't figure out half the camera gear at that point. And so just making sure the settings are right. I mean, I'm still missing stuff. I mean, don't get me wrong, but what's a defining moment on a walk-off? Is it the ball hitting the bat? I mean, no, because it may be, but there might be after the stroke goes through, he's swung all the way around and he's looking to where the ball goes. Maybe that's a shot, or maybe it's the coming around third base to home plate. It's all whatever the player is doing that makes it a shot. And there's no, you'll know a good shot when you look at it later. But the whole idea is just to not give up and keep on shooting. And that's what I've had other photographers that I've, either talked to or mentored that came on that, once they missed whatever they thought was the key shot, he left. He just picked up his stuff and left because they're so depressed. And I'm like, there's all kinds of stuff going on with that. I'm like, what are you doing? You stay. We're all part of a team. You're not going to get every shot. If you got 5 angles, if you miss that ball off bat, big deal. But there is other stuff going on that makes that play memorable. Then I think we had a game against the Padres where we had 4 home runs to tie it, and then Nomar came off and with a walk off in the next inning after, and it was a crazy setting. And I got, when you're on the third base side and the right-handed batter's hitting and he hits the ball, if it goes to left field, then you have a chance at an angle, but you've missed the ball hitting the bat because it's already out in front. And even if you do, you got a pure back shot, right? If you're standing, if his back's to you and then he turns and then, maybe that's a shot. But the next shot will be when he comes around home plate and all the guys are like ganging up and, a big old mass of players. That's quote the shot, right? Mm-hmm. So there are just so many different ways to do this that there's no defined moment. It's just defined for where you are, where you're shooting from.
My next question for you was going to be specifically about shooting World Series games. And if the team were to win, would you get a ring? Would you get a World Series ring?
Well, let's see. 88, I did not receive a ring.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, it kind of pissed me off like a lot, but at this point in time, when you get in front of God, is he going to care whether you have a ring or not? So, but I've been blessed the last couple seasons that the Dodgers gave, NL championship rings. After we've lost the World Series, the Dodgers gave me a ring for each year. Wow. So there you go. I got a ring. So, I mean, in the end, it's, it's just probably the ego that doesn't feel good when you don't get one, but
sure,
then when you get one. And so, I mean, for 88, Andy at the time was conflicting with NBA. He had NBA conflicts in October. And so he was unable to be at the World Series games. And so I was covering it by myself. And the parade, I covered it by myself. I mean, I'm just White House visit, I covered myself. And so it's like all these different entities and the historical images that you see of the World Series in 88 are what I shot. And so to not have that kind of love because of politically not being the right kind of employee, blah, 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 all these different,
wow,
levels of bullshit. But it was what it was. And, I roll with it. And I know that, I've learned from it. Not we don't always get what we want. but it's all good. It all worked out fine. And so it's just to be respected more than anything. And
Yeah,
that's what that brings.
I find that really interesting. I had always assumed, I knew that you shot the World Series in '88, and I just had assumed that maybe you were like, the intern who had just got there, and that there was maybe a team of multiple photographers. I'll be honest, I was shocked when you told me that there's really only 2 photographers covering the game.
Well, there's only one on. I'm a full-time employee now, which became that way in 2012. Up to that point, I was an outside contractor, and through
Wow.
Andy during '80, and when I was working for Andy, I was considered a subcontractor. So, but the point is that you have no images without me shooting it. If so the fact that Andy didn't get a ring, I didn't get a ring, and that kind of hurt for 1988. But we both grew from it. We just kind of like figured it kind of out along the way. And so if it's supposed to happen, it'll happen. It's not that I'm not sweating it anymore, because at this point in life, I'm just happy to be alive. So
and having a job that many would absolutely kill for.
Oh, absolutely.
Many would kill
Absolutely.
For. Yeah. So you talked there about all the images from the '88 World Series that we see, they're going to be yours. So I want to, and we've talked a little bit about the walk-off, right? The importance of the walk-off. So I want to go back to that Game 1 of the '88 World Series. I mean, one of the most iconic moments in all of Dodger history. Bottom of the ninth, 2 outs, right? Everybody knows the story who's a Dodger fan. Run around first, and it was Eckersley, who's obviously hadn't even let up a home run in more than a month when Kurt Gibson walks up to the plate. Didn't even start the game, right? Injuries, everybody thought this was going to be a mess. Immediately, all 56,000 fans stand up. They just start going crazy. Finally, there is some hope. So I want to know, for you, in that moment, as a fan, what is it that you're feeling? And then as a photographer, how are you preparing for the potential, and in this case, eventual walk-off game-winning home run?
Okay, well, first off, that fan part, no chance during a game like that. No chance during any kind of job where you have responsibilities, and in a sense, like you talk about your guys worrying how they if they miss the moment. Well, I had to prepare for this moment like no other. I didn't. What did I know? It was only my 3rd year into it. We hadn't really been through I hadn't been through something like that before, where I would have to think about what I was doing and make decisions. Like, number one, I was at frame 15 out of roll of 36 at that time before he came up, and I'm the significance of the game. You're behind, and if he hits a home run, we win it. So I just thought enough to rewind that 15, even though economically you're thinking you're going to waste the last some team shots of pictures, and it's like that. I just said, what, it's a roll of whatever. I'll throw it in I'll just switch rolls out. I have a fresh new roll. And remember, back in the day, it's manual focus, it's manual exposure, and granted, the exposure is pretty much the same at that time, but the focusing you're doing it on your own while pulling the trigger. There's no autofocus to bail you out. And so as he takes the pitches and the count goes full, and I'm just concentrating on him, and I was able to get like I said about the back shot behind, having the back facing you, and whatever happens, and if that moment you're going to miss whatever that moment is. Well, his moment, I'm on the first base side for this game, because Andy was on third base, and so he essentially just pulled it down the right field line, and it was almost like he did a backhand, like a tennis backhand, if he was a right-hander. And he turned my way towards the right field line, and so I was able to get a nice, hand over hand, and then the twist. Then I have his face as he's running down first, and then I, followed him at some point at first base, and then I, we're gonna start losing focus at some point because I'm just not that good at that following. So he turns around towards first and he goes towards second, and so now I move my camera over to third base to Joey Malfitano, who's the coach over there. And I know that at some point I got to line him up with Kurt coming around. So I know I missed the arm pump at second base, but I had bigger fish to fry because I had to make sure I had to cover from third base to home, because that would be my only angle to see his face. And so I aimed and turned, and he gives Joey a nice hug there, or a handshake there, and then he goes to the plate. And the funny thing is that my lab tech at the time, are you familiar with black and white processing?
I am, yes.
Film? Well, those metal reels?
Yes.
how you do the roll the film. Well, frames 29 to 35 were squished on the film in front of it.
Oh
So
no.
what was missed was from third, after Joey shook his hand, to the first part of the handshakes at the plate were totally gone. They were totally messed up. But the final frame, frame 36, was this one frame of him hugging Tommy. His face is aiming towards me. You see a huge group shot and of the group around him. But I was able to get one frame off before I ran out of film. And, you know, God looking out for me, and he gave me that last frame of the hug at the plate. And so it wasn't the ball on the bat that's the moment. It's that hug that's going to be remembered. You know, in my eyes, that's what that picture is in my mind. It's just that last photo of him hugging Tommy and all the guys around him at the plate. And that was my saving moment. I was so angry at my tech at the time because, you know, he just that could have been the end of it. You know,
Yeah.
that from third to home was kind of a big deal. You know, but you know, just so happened that last frame is, God forbid, save.
I mean, there we go. Going
So,
back to talking about, you know, photographers wanting to shoot on nothing but two cards. And here, you know, that's a perfect example right there. Almost half of the photos were essentially useless except for that last
yeah,
frame.
exactly. And so it's like it's from above. It's meant to be or it's not. And so if you know your camera can go down too. You know, deleting both sides of both cards. You know, what's the it's just either meant to be or it's not. And so if it's not, then you know it sucks. But you got to roll on to the next event. So that's just how you have to look
Wow.
at it.
So his entire at bat took the entire roll of 36. Is that right?
I pulled as much as I shot as much as I could going around,
Mhm.
you know, as far as I can get, like up to Manny Moto at first base. And then when he turned, I tried following, you know, past second base around towards third. And then when he got hurt towards home, then I kind of unloaded a little bit more. Of course, that's the stuff that got messed up in the
Yeah.
processing. So it's, and that was it. And I had my second camera and I was able to use with a shorter lens, as I had a 180-2.8 on it at the time. And I got a shot of the group, like kind of, you know, once the jubilation happens and it ends, the kind of like the momentum goes towards the dugout to go into the clubhouse. And so I got a few shots of that, but you know, it's all part of the process. And it was just, you
Yeah.
know, two cameras ago. And then, you know, it was just that was one crazy ride. That's the loudest I've ever heard Dodger Stadium. And to this day,
Oh man.
JT's home run against the Cubs in that playoff game was probably, you know, the next loudest. And then Nomar's walk off against the Padres, but there weren't that many fans in the stands then. But for JT's, where everybody was still in their seats, and for Gibby, it although you see all the brake lights going off for the right field pavilion, there were still a lot of people still left in there, and so
Yeah.
it was loud. It was
Oh,
definitely the loudest I can remember. Because I was younger, at 20 something years old, that felt loud as ever. It was also because for my first time going through it. Now I'm just kind of like taking it as, you know, don't miss a shot. I don't get as emotionally tied as like I used to go.
hmm.
So
I can imagine. I mean, after shooting for as long as you have, it just, I don't want to say that it probably becomes part of the job, but you know, I would imagine that your focus is now, or maybe that it's that you're taking your job more seriously in the mo. I don't know what I'm trying to say there. I'll just move on. I'll move on from that. Where I wanted to go though was, you know, you take a lot of photos during a game. I think you said earlier you might take 5,000 photos in a
that's a
game.
joke. I have no idea how much I'm
Oh,
not
okay.
even near that.
Well,
That's
let's.
just
Uh, Point is, I'm sure that you take a bunch of photos, right? More than
absolutely.
you would when you were shooting on film. What I want to know is, what does it take for out of all those photos for one to really stand out as a powerful photo for you?
Well, powerful is not as important as necessary.
Okay.
There is no one specific photo that means much as far as, you know, whatever I think is going to go on a wall somewhere, hopefully someday. It's more like, you know, I'm there at 3:30 to shoot batting practice on the field, and people come down on the field that are guests of either marketing department or friends or whatever. And so those group shots of whatever I'm shooting with whatever player are as valuable as whatever was going to go on the back of that wall of mine, because these people will have it on their wall when they're, or on the refrigerator, or on their, you know, whatever, for some photo gift for, you know, some holiday, because they got a picture of Cody Bellinger and Justin Turner. So it's more of you're factoring everything, every little group shot you take, every, any hug that comes from one person to another. That could be, I mean, it's all day. It has nothing to do with, just trying to get on a wall. It's trying to make sure you make memories for the people that are actually in them. And then the post part of actually getting it to them.
Oh wow, that's I think a lot of people are going to be surprised to hear that. To hear that as as I think when it comes to sports, people think it's just very high volume, get the shot, maybe get it out or whatever. But you're really taking a human approach to photography. You're really bringing that human
Well,
element
look at it
back
like
into it.
you're a wedding photographer. You're not just shooting
Hmm.
the wedding party. You're shooting Aunt Joe with the bride. You're shooting Uncle Fester with,
Uncle
the
Fester,
wedding
yeah.
party.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's all you have to take care of those images. Like I take care of my people. You have to take care of those people because that's what's going to
Yeah.
go in that book. That's what's going to go in that wedding book. It's exactly the same thing that you're doing. It's just that I happen to have, either Cody Bellinger or Clayton Kershaw in these photos. And so, as much as I take it for granted, the person in that photo with them won't. That's like the most valuable
Of
thing of the
course.
year, or a lifetime,
That
you
that
know?
would be mine. Yeah, I would
Yeah, well, there you go.
put it on this
See,
wall right here. Yeah. In fact,
my
I'm
goal
not
is to be
sure
on
if you can see.
everybody's mantle.
Well, I think one of your photos is right here on. I'm not sure if it's your photo or not. I found this at a flea market. It was just a large photo of Dodger Stadium, nice wide shot.
And that's what it comes down to. All my shit ends up on a flea market or Costco.
Oh, that's too funny. Well, regardless, wherever it ends up, I'm glad that this one ended up right here on
Oh,
my
yeah,
wall.
me
It
too. Me
gives me a
too.
little glimpse of back home, so I appreciate that. Moving forward, when it comes to shooting sports, a lot of athletes, in particular baseball, athletes, they're very superstitious. I've always been interested in, for you, being so deep in that environment around all these other athletes. Does any of that superstition rub off on you and maybe the way that you shoot?
No, the only thing that really comes into play is the gear working.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so superstitiously, I guess it's not. But if I'm, before game even happens, I'm in my office making sure my gear is working, and then being able to alter the other to another body to make sure it is all functioning. But as far as being in the same spot or not changing your underwear and blah blah blah, it's like, nah. I mean, I think this is already predetermined by up above. It's if it's meant to be, it will be, and if
Mm-hmm.
it's win, it's win. If it's lost, it's lost. It just is what it is. So.
So when you're talking about the amount of gear that you're prepping before a game, you want to walk me through real quick about all the gear that you're carrying on you? You see some photographers with 4 or 5 cameras. Is that you, or are you just a one camera, one
Oh
body
hell no!
kind of guy?
Right, pretty much right now. Well, my office just changed because I was in the clubhouse. I mean, I was literally right by the dugout door. That was my office. That was for the last 2 seasons, because they booted me out of my club level office to put somebody that was more worthy of the that space than what I was. And
Oh,
so,
geez.
um, but I found a little nook down in the clubhouse area that worked, and they put a couple walls off of me, and I have my little cabinet in there. And so, to that point, I was, I would carry my 28 to 300 with a strobe. I use Nikon, so the SB, like, either 800 or 910 or whatever the strobe is at the time. And
Hmm.
that was my pregame setup. And then when the game time hit, I would hang onto that lens and that body, and then you put up my other D5 with a 200 to 500 to shoot game action from wherever I was. And so that was it. That's my setup. But the strobes have to work. ISO has to be set properly. Make sure it's firing right. Make sure I'm connecting to my social media people through the Ethernet. So just those little factors. That was my game prep for the last probably 3 years now. So.
So would you say that it's probably easier than most people assume that it is, as far as I take that back. I
Well,
don't. I don't want it to sound like your job is easy or anything here. I just know that I'm thinking, major league, very big production. When it comes to the photography, I'm sure that a lot of people listening right now are thinking, as I said earlier, I was surprised that it's only you and another photographer shooting these games. I would assume that it'd be more. I'd assume that it'd be much bigger. It's obviously a much smaller scale than all that. And I'm trying to figure out a question here, but I'm not. It's
yeah.
not coming to me. Does any of that? Is there anything in there that you want to say to that?
Well, it's I've learned over the years. I used to carry, well, for a football game, I would carry a 600 millimeter, I carry a 300 millimeter, and I carry like a 50 around my neck. And so that would be what I'd be running up and down the sideline was. And then as time went on, if I could get my hands on a 400-8 and a converter for one body, and then 80 to 200 on my side here. I mean, just a matter of what, depends on what the game situation is. And I've noticed as time goes by that gear's heavy has gotten heavier unless you realize, it's not as important to have a big old 600 or 4 as much as it is to have a small wide angle lens, because my axis is closer than, all the other media photographers. I'm like in the clubhouse and in the dugout. I'm everywhere. That's, a lot of times where it's not as needing of a 300-8. It's the 24-70 might be it. The 16 to 35 might be it. And so it's just a matter of, how I play it. But I just know that I don't necessarily need a big old piece of glass because I'm right in the middle of it. Now this year, because I'm going to be further out, and I added the Sony A9 II to my gear, and I bought the 200 to 600. So wow. I didn't know this at the time that I'd really need it because I was shooting football with it. But obviously it's going to be needed more because I'm not even going to be near the dugout. I'm not, I'll be lucky to touch the field. So everything's going to be from either off the field on the, first or third base in the seats, or I'll be in the outfield where the 200, 600 will be perfect. So it's just a matter of gearing up so you fit everything in. So
sure. Especially being aware of where you're going to be shooting and how you're going to be shooting it.
Right.
That makes sense. That makes sense. If let's just say tomorrow, you got a call that was like, hey, Jon, we're adding a bunch of new photographers. We really want to get a lot more photos here. We know that you're going to call Raymond, obviously, to come and be an intern for the Dodgers. And of course, I would gladly show up. But when I did show up, what's the one thing that you would want to tell me that I would make sure about photography before I even took the field?
Well, first off, if you don't go through Bert Hanashiro's Sports Shooter Academy, I'm not even talking to you. Period. Oh, wow. I mean, that's just all there's to it, because in order to know this business, you have to know what is involved. And by coming straight to a ball game with, your whatever lens, your whatever camera setup, I don't want to have to spend time teaching you how to figure out the editing mode of photo mechanic into photo shelter into, FTPing this there. And, I want somebody seasoned enough to know what their responsibilities are. And my editors have come from there, that are now, editor shooters, Josh Barber and Katie Chin, and Carrie Giordano is another graduate of the Sports Shooter Academy. Juan Ocampo has been with me for forever, and he didn't need it because he grew along with me from the film era into the digital era. But without anybody going through Sports Shooter Academy, I'm not really, I'm going to patronize you because that's just my personality. But if you're not serious enough to take the academy for a week and invest in yourself, and you can't, if you don't have the gear, if you're, picking up at Costco, your body and your lens, then, we're not even in the same, conversation at this point. But if you go through that academy, and then I get a nice, thumbs up, thumbs down from Bert or the instructors there who are, we're talking Wally from the LA Times, we're talking, all these very bona fide shooters that have been in the business. They're going to give me this straight up. This person's not as, as energetic as this person. They're not as good a shooter, but they're really good on the other end of taking care of the mechanical ends of the digitizing and that mechanical part of the process. And so honestly, I'm picking everybody on the same level as far as everybody can shoot great sports. Everybody can. But if you have no sense of teamwork, because this is a very team involved, I run a team ship. This is not an individual. I don't give a fuck about whether you have, the greatest shot at home plate, because if you miss the group shot on the field because you're being selfish, then I don't want you here. So it's just a very team attitude that we have. I'm taking care of the whole organization, not just, whether you get a great shot of a home plate, because that's not the picture. The picture for me is all the other pictures of all the group shots, of all the, the players and their wives, players and, this, that, and the other, all the other parts that don't have nothing to do with the game. So if you want a job just shooting sports, then go to publication, go to paper or a wire service or an agency. But I'm only interested in somebody who's going to fulfill the whole day, not just, the 3 hours of game time. So. you got to pay your dues.
Well, that's good to know. I'm gonna stop faxing my resume to the Dodgers organization until I go through that course for sure.
Well, Sports
Uh,
Shooter Academy is well worth it because I tell you, they do it out here in Pasadena. They bring in either a Nikon or Canon to have to let the photographers or the students practice play with the gear, and then they have photo mechanic is on site, and then they have games at the local colleges that they work in coordination with. So the photographers will go shoot these football games, or they'll shoot these
wow.
basketball games, or they'll go shoot these baseball games. They'll come back, they'll process and digitize them, and then they'll have the different instructors go through the images and give them suggestions or basic information about hey, maybe you should try this, or if you have a second body, try that. And so it's just a different it's like going to a photography school, an art photography school, except this is condensed into a week, and it's for those who are really serious about getting into this business.
I gotta say, I'm glad that you're doing it. I don't think I could. I think I like the beer and the peanuts too much while watching baseball. I don't think I could do it. But I'm glad that
Well,
there's people in the
the
world who
difference
can.
is that I have the relationships that come with it. I mean, I got Cody Bellinger. I got everybody's phone numbers on my cell phone. I send them because of social media. I'm sending them images more now than
Directly.
ever. And so they want me to shoot it because they know I'm going to get something good, and I'll be responsible enough to get it to them right after. So it goes hand in hand. And everybody could shoot with their phone, but whether they're going to be seriously good at imaging with it and get it to them and get them onto a wall somewhere to be that they'll remember, having a professional do it that's responsible is a heck of a lot more valuable to me than being a fan in the stands, which I haven't really honestly. I don't go to a game unless I'm on the
Sure.
field.
Yeah.
So
Oh, man. Such a completely different experience than so many have.
absolutely,
It's awesome.
absolutely.
I want to know now if you. I want you to walk me through an average day. Let's say that it was, I don't know, June 30th. Dodgers were playing the Reds. How does your day start? What's the first thing that you do when you arrive at the stadium?
Well, first off, I'll get there anywhere from I'm aiming for like noon, to be there from noon, get in my office, just kind of get settled in, get my gear ready to go, and back in the day, last year, I'd go hang in the clubhouse or the clubbies, or the food room, and hang out with the chef there, and just this is all downstairs in the clubhouse. This is all off limits anyway.
Yeah.
And then between batting practice starting at 3, that time from noon to 3 goes really fast. And so next thing you know, they'll be taking the field for BP, and that's when all the groups show up, and that's when I take all the grip and grins with all the either players and fans or players and their guests, and that'll lead into the actual the pregame ceremonies of the anthem singer and the first base tipping of the cap for the sponsors, or blah blah blah, whoever the special VIPs are, and then that leads to the anthem, and kids take the field, and next thing you know, the players are on the field, and the game begins. I'm done shooting about 9:30, 10 o'clock ish, and on a real competitive game, it can go anywhere from 11:30 or so. And then as I'm get done with that, the crowd will clear out. I'll take my cards back from my editor, and if I've given my cards, and then I'll go home and usually go through my cards on my own and put them on my own hard drives, just so I can pick the selects that I want, because I don't necessarily need the whole game. So then the cycle begins again the next day for our same 7 o'clock game.
Wow, that's a long day. That's a long day. I think that's longer than a lot of people would anticipate for sure.
It's what? It's because it's such a routine. It's not like it's keeping me from anything.
Yeah.
It's my life. It's not. It's a way of life, and it could be 24 hours a day. I think I'd be fine with that.
That's dedication. I love that, and it's clear to see why the Dodgers keep you on for as long as they have. Because I can tell just by talking to you that you truly love this, and that you're very passionate about what it is that you do, and take it seriously. I love that.
It's
I love
hard.
that.
It's hard at times. So, but it's good when it's a good situation. There's no doubt. It's just that the harder part is when I go outside of the bubble, quote, of the being around who I'm around, to go hang out with other, like, quote, friends. And then, or I don't go to bars. I don't go do any of that crazy nightlife stuff that, probably most normal people do. But the reason why I don't go is because I don't necessarily want to hear about somebody's, opinion about my friends who are, putting their, the bats out and their gloves out and
Oh,
doing what they
wow.
do. I don't want to hear you bashing on, X, Y, and Z player. And I've heard this like the entire time I've, been around, I've been alive. And so I've just kind of like refrained from going into social situations. That's why I play basketball twice a week. That's my social outlet. And so if somebody starts talking too much and it's just an elbow coming, it's not anything I could just debate in a bar and get, so
Yeah,
just a different way of life. And so I've just kind of like limit who I hang out with, just because I don't really want to hear it,
I get
It's not
that.
sports talk radio. This is what I do. And these are like my brothers, starting from like the Dave Roberts, who I remember him playing. And, to this day, I'm close with him because I've known him all his playing career and now his managing career. So to have somebody like, hey, you did the wrong thing, and then, well, that's fine. Why don't you tell him? He's right here. And
Yeah.
then they, shut up right up.
Yeah.
They shut right
Turn
up after
around.
that. I don't. What makes you think I need to hear your comment about whatever my friends are going through? If you have
Of
something to
course.
say it right to them.
Yeah, I love that
So
approach. I love that approach. After I don't think I'd be able to do that. I think I would probably take the exact same approach as you. I mean, if you're so deep into it, why even bother? Why does it even matter what other people would say about that? That's interesting because
yeah, that's
sports
why I
is
just
so
avoid it.
yeah. Well, that brings me to my next question. I have a listener named Jim, and he's a Brewers fan. So, you can take this question for, however you want to take it. But he wanted to know how much room is there for creativity in sports photography? Or are you just expected to get that shot and move on?
Well, it depends on the different houses that you're in. I mean, Dodger Stadium, I pretty much have the run of the place to go and roam wherever I want because I have I'm the house guy, so I can pretty much move around. And I make a point of not being the same static, on the field spot because, I have the ability to not be. So I move around the ballpark. I use, if I have to use a 600, then I'll, pull it out. Sometimes I shoot from the top of the ballpark. Sometimes, I mean, the creativity is up for me to just move my feet to get. And a lot of the problem is that people get so comfortable behind their long lenses that they get lazy and they'll stay in the end zone instead of moving down the sidelines. And so, whatever you maybe think you're getting because you're sitting there, you might be missing something just because you don't want to get up and use your feet to walk to the other end zone, or walk to the sideline, on the other side. It's just a matter of, I just don't like staying still. I move a lot. And so that's probably a lot of my success is just, taking a chance, and knowing that I have a photographer on the other side of the field to do the other stuff, the normal angles. I'll feel comfortable going overhead to the, reserve level in the left field corner and try something with a long lens from up there, just to get something different per se. Only at this point, there's not much different going on that I haven't really thought of that, that hasn't crossed my mind, but it has been 35 years worth of doing this. So but the creativity never ends. It should never end,
Yeah, I think probably where many are thinking, and kind of I had this, I just didn't know, is, how much of the game are you focused on versus kind of all the other activities. And I think that you explained that pretty well, which is that you kind of have to cover it all, depending on who you're shooting for, I suppose. Is that right?
Right. Well, the game is still the game. That's the best part
Yeah.
about all this, all the other peripheral bullshit that comes about. It's still the game between the lines. And so if Jeter's coming up and it's, you don't get to see these guys too often. So like I made a point of shooting Bonds all the time. Whenever he came through, whenever he was at bat, I would take the image, I would point my camera at him instead of at our pitcher or whatever, just because, greatness is greatness. And you see those great players come through, and missing them is not really something I ever try to do, because I always try to shoot both, both teams, at least they're stars. So, and it's funny because, being in the business for so long, a lot of the players that come through go to other teams. And so I know all these other players from other teams that are, and of course, are now managers, like the Craig Counsels, the Don Mattingleys, all the people that have gone through Dodger Stadium at some point. I've gotten to know over the years, and so I have relationships with everybody. So when everybody talks about, "Oh, he's a Giant fan," he's a blah blah blah, it's like, well, that's I'm a human fan. So if there's if Mark Sweeney's up with the Giants or the Padres, I'm a Mark Sweeney fan no matter what, unless he's playing against the Dodgers. But other than that, I mean, I've got to know Christian Yelich a little bit because he had the benefit thing down here with Cody Bellinger, and so
Yes.
everybody knows who everybody is, and with the invent of social media, everybody's on everybody's account anyway. So
Of course,
you can
of
message,
course.
you can get closer to people now than you would never have been able to do, during the Mike Piazza era.
Oh man, I can't even imagine. I cannot imagine how much different it would be for a player playing today versus players who, I mean, even just 5 years ago, like Matt Kemp. I mean, I can't imagine what it would be like for him coming up versus like a Cody Bellinger who's coming up now, who probably had a very similar, experience in terms of the age that they were when they come up, but just in this different world.
Well,
I
it was
don't know. That
also
was another
MySpace. It was MySpace instead of
MySpace. Yeah.
Instagram or Facebook.
Uh,
But now, but at least the best part about all of this is that it used to be like the team brand. You would come up with the Los Angeles Dodgers, period. But now each one of these players has their own platform to be their own, to be themselves. And so when like
yeah.
Black Lives Matters, it matters because they're putting it out them. LeBron's doing it himself. He's putting out the messages himself. And so there's no filter like it used to be back in the era before social media. I mean, can you imagine Jackie Robinson having a Facebook account or an Instagram? How much? I mean, the fact that everybody can be their own brand now, and anybody calling anybody out is going to get called out themselves because it'll get turned back around on them to see where they're coming from. And so, you're just seeing all the cards being played right in front of you. So
Yeah.
it's just a fascinating, and the fact that the players, nowadays have their own platforms, and like Justin Turner does his foundation, and he's doing some wonderful stuff with the LA Dream Center, and it's just all the different guys have their own different outlets. It's just that anytime somebody like pops off in some sort of unpopular way, it could go, that's when it goes viral, and that's when shit takes off. But then that increases the numbers, whether it's good or bad. It still increases the number and the analytics, which I guess matter more than a lot. So
I know. As if you didn't have to worry about enough with, on base percentages and swing and angle and all these things. Now you got to worry about social media analytics. It is I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. I'm glad that I just get to sit at home and watch for sure. Like
yeah,
again, like I said, with a beer in my hand and my wife by my side. So
yeah.
I got a question about you and kind of your upbringing. You're an LA native, right? You were born and raised
Mm-hmm.
there in LA.
Yeah.
I want to know what it's like for you now, being a part of and doing so much for this iconic organization like for Los Angeles. What does that feel like for you?
It's a complete blessing. I know when I'm going through my academic years of going through school, I could never plan this. There's no major in being a sports photographer. Just I know God blessed me with the ability to with this possible opportunity to make this inroad to shoot not just Dodgers, but I shoot everything, and to have the experiences that I've had along the way has been has been a, a complete gift, and I love every part of it. And growing up, fourth generation Chinese American, my grandfather was the founder of LA Chinatown, the new LA Chinatown, and having this history, to be able to go to be a part of the LA scene in some way, shape, or form, however small, it's still pretty cool to last over 30 years worth of this. I mean,
Yeah.
all the events that I've seen, the Super Bowls, the NBA championships, and all the different events I've gone to has been a complete, it's awesome. And I don't take any of this for granted. I mean, I'll fight to the last moment to work for the Dodgers as long as humanly possible. And as long as my knees work and, my gear, my eyes are still seeing what can, translate to my trigger finger, I will, continue doing. But I know it's a gift from God. There's no way I could have looked at it any other way.
That is so great. Once again, just to hear that gratitude, I can hear that gratitude that you have in your voice, and it's very refreshing that you're not taking any of it for granted. There's that, I don't remember who said it, but there's that term, never meet your heroes. And I gotta say, you haven't disappointed. You haven't disappointed at all today, John. So I really appreciate
Oh, my
that.
head's getting big. Stop it, man.
Well, I know that I've kept you and far too long, way longer than I said that I would today. So again, I want to be mindful of your time. But before I let you go, is there anything that maybe I didn't ask you that you want to make sure that new and aspiring sports photographers understand about shooting?
I'm probably going to go back to what I told you before, as far as don't think your sports image of this particular play as a team photographer. Don't think that one photo of an action shot is going to make a difference between whether you get a job or not. It has nothing to do with your photography skills. I mean, you're supposed to be competent. Everybody is going to come in equally competent as far as I'm concerned. But if you're not responsible enough to do something with that photo after, if you're not responsible enough to be on time, if you're not responsible to be kind to other people, if you're not doing your part, because photographers in general have a little, especially, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say, most that go through photography schools, academies, or whatever, they come up with a little chip on their shoulder. And that may be relevant for a wire service or a newspaper photographer or an agency. But as far as a team photographer goes, it's personal relationships that mean everything. And so if you don't take care of your responsibilities, if you're not a man of your word, if you're not a woman of your word, if you say you're going to do something and you don't do it, don't come to me for a gig, because it's not going to happen. And then the other part of it is, by way of Sports Shooter Academy, learning the technology. If I don't have Katie and Josh showing me the way how to do half the stuff, I mean, I have a basic idea what I want to do, and but if without Josh, showing me the way, it's pretty confusing how to, even to put a freaking hashtag on Instagram is like, how would I put on? What am I supposed to do? How do I copy that one onto, whatever? But, it's all learning the technology is probably a lot more of it than, that's my version of darkroom work when I was paying my dues, just doing all the darkroom work. They have to do the darkroom work with the computer and their phones and the technology. If you do that part of it and you're a good person and you're respectful to all races, including Asian males, there's a good chance you have a happy life in front of you, whether it's in sports photography or if as a team photographer or in other walks of life.
Jon, I don't know how to end it any better than that. You've been so gracious with your time today. You've been an open book, and I cannot tell you how much I appreciate this and how much my heart is still racing inside talking to you today. So this is great.
Jeez.
Before I let you go, do you want to let listeners know either where they can find and keep up with you online?
No, you tell them where to go on my Instagram,
I'll
because
do
that's
that.
really pretty much all I do. But honestly, I'm only allowed to post my non-Dodger stuff at this point, and even then, I'm not really supposed to post any non-Dodger stuff. Any sports stuff, because they think of me as just a Dodger guy. But I mean, if you could just, my Instagram is like Jon.Soohoo, Jon.Soohoo, then that'll be good. Because beyond that, I don't know other, just send messages if you like, but. For anybody really wanting to get into it, Sports Shooter Academy is where to start. If you go to the academy, if you apply to go to the workshops, and let me know. And I gave the speech the last time in a couple months ago. Actually, it's like right before the shutdown, as a matter of fact, the last academy. So yeah, it's good.
I will put that on my dream board for sure. Yeah. Again, Jon, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing everything that you did.
No problem.
I'll tell you, I have no words right now. Jon is truly not only a great photographer, but he is just as great of a person as I could have ever imagined. You probably didn't notice this because I cut it out, but my internet actually went out halfway through the interview and totally disconnected us. I had no idea what was going on. I'm freaking out. Didn't know if it was him. Didn't know if it was me. Went running around the house asking if everybody was still on the internet, if they still had a connection. Jon actually called me to make sure that everything was okay. I got a phone call in the middle of this, and I thought to myself, oh, there's no way that I can answer this phone call right now. I got to get back to this. But for some reason I answered, and it was Jon, just to see if everything was okay and, actually make sure that, nothing happened and that it was all right. And he was gracious enough with his time to keep going. To put up with that nonsense that I went through and come back what's crazy is that he's in the middle of ramping back up for spring training. Like, if anybody doesn't have time right now, it's him. And yet again, he continued on with the interviews. Just truly great, truly great. My biggest takeaway from this chat with Jon Soohoo was his dedication to shooting sports, not just baseball. He said that he photographs, just about everything: football, baseball, basketball. And it was just a dedication to the craft because, he doesn't see photography, or what I picked up was that, it's not about shooting the sports, it's about photographing the people. It's about photographing the people. And that is a big distinction, a big differentiator right there. And then just saying, don't give up, keep shooting. So often that we just want that immediate payoff, but you simply cannot start off at the top. So don't give up, just keep shooting. I would love to hear your takeaway from this interview with Jon Soohoo and his experience shooting for the Dodgers and just about every other sport over the almost past 40 years now. So feel free to share your biggest takeaway about this interview in the Beginner Photography Podcast Facebook group. I can't wait to hear it. That's it for this week. Super long episode. Until next week, make do. Make more, do more, and make do with the gear that you got, because I promise you, it's better than you think. See you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Beginner Photography Podcast. If you enjoy the show, consider leaving a review in iTunes. Keep shooting, and we'll see you next week.